How's it going?
I'm doing wonderfully. How about yourself?
Uh, I'm doing all right. Little nervous. It's my first time being live on a stream. And the fact that it's like below below 0 degrees here it probably doesn't help either.
Ah, well, the CCP goons have already been sent. They've already been dispatched. So we'd better be expedient then before they get you. You said you didn't want to share your name, which is pretty obviously fine by me. But would you mind telling the fine people in chat how they should refer to you, and also what you're doing here?
Yeah, sure. So chat, y'all can refer to me as Brandon. Not dark Brandon, just normal Brandon. Um, my pronouns are he, him, and the reason why I'm obfuscating my identity is because I am an American currently living in China, and I'm here to share a little bit of my experience just being foreigner living in China this last year and having gone through both the Shanghai lockdown earlier this spring as well as some fun times in Beijing. So yeah, I'm here to share my story about that. Um, yes, before I go on, I want to kind of like um, point out that I'm here sharing my own personal experience. And I don't want to in any way kind of claim that my experience is representative of uh, the average Chinese person living here in China, nor to say that it's representative of the average foreigner's experience. So I just kind of want to get that out of the way that I don't speak for the entirety of everybody who's gone through all of the wacky stuff that's happened this year. Um, I also don't claim to be a pundit or a China expert. I'm merely a guy who's just, kind of doing his thing here and coming on to share my story. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How long did you say you've been in China? More or less.
So this year, it's been around 8 years, I'd say. Yeah, 8 years. Came here the second half of 2014. For most of that time, I've lived in Shanghai, but I've been living in Beijing the last few months.
Gotcha. Sorry, I'm going back through our older emails. I remember having talked to you a long time ago. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, the original messages were how far back is this?
probably
Yeah.
around like
Woo!
April, May.
Yeah, no. Man, those kick back. Okay. Well, look. So we've accepted now that everything you have to say is fully representative of every experience people have had in China, and everything you say will be held to the highest standards of scrutiny as such. Now that we've got that out of the way,
Mhm.
I want to know. And okay, first of all, let's set some appropriate context, quell fears, whatever. Okay, general
Mhm.
ideological disposition. Hit it. Are you a Nazi? How do you feel?
Yeah, so I would consider myself very much a leftist. And I actually attribute your stream, your content for bringing me a little further over. I've always considered myself to be fairly progressive, perhaps liberal at times, but yeah, I'm definitely very much a leftist, um, interested in market socialism, that sort of thing. I do not consider myself a tanky, so there's no apologia happening on this stream from me.
Yeah, the issue I feel with learning about China is that generally speaking, when I want to learn about conflicts in other countries, or I mean everything about other countries, I usually try to rely on left-leaning sources, not
Mm,
not necessarily because I'm looking for that bias, but because there's usually an underlying layer of colonialism that influences how things turn out the
Right.
way they are, and that tends not to get addressed. You know, it can depend. Wikipedia generally has a good write up, but for more specific stuff, for China especially, there are so many narratives that go into this, and conservatives have obviously so many narratives that go into how they talk about China, COVID, the
Right.
lockdown. And left leaning people have, like, unfortunately, very conflicting priorities here. There are left leaning people who are more sympathetic to China than I might be, who want to defend them on the grounds that they, um, are resistant to Western imperialism. There are people who respect China for the lockdowns because we didn't really do those in the US. There are so many different
Mm.
angles. Honest to God, I barely understand what's going on over there. It's the biggest country in the world, and I know less about it than I do some small, like, African micronations because so many people have different angles in China. Um, so,
Mm.
okay, so the lockdowns. You said you moved there a while back, all right? So you would have moved there after the initial lockdowns, correct?
Um, yeah. So, yeah, no, just going back to 2020, I was actually almost locked out of China when COVID was first popping off because I was for Chinese New Year, like everybody gets a long holiday, and so me and my homeboy were in South Korea, and then the day before we were supposed to fly back, our flight got canceled because of health concerns. That's all they said, and we knew obviously like, oh, shit must be popping off for it to be this bad. I was eventually able to get back to Shanghai after like a 10-day detour in Japan. I slept on somebody's couch. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've been in China pretty much since February 10th, 2020. And the weird thing was, um, Shanghai never went through like a widespread lockdown until this spring, but a lot of other parts of China have gone through various different stages of lockdown. Obviously, Wuhan, where this all started, was under lockdown for quite a while. So for most of the last 2 years, I feel like I've been detached to from like the greater virus issue to a certain extent because after a few months in 2020 it kind of felt like the virus didn't exist anymore. Shanghai, I felt, did a very good job of kind of preventing COVID from coming into the city, and
Okay.
life felt very normal
What did
aside from
they
the fact that like
what did they do to prevent that? How they keep things minimal?
um so I think that a good part of it was just luck. I mean, I think that Shanghai got insanely lucky. That's a big part of it. Um, in terms of like what they did in order to kind of like keep cases from popping off the way they did other parts, I just feel that local government was very good at kind of like controlling the flow of people uh into Shanghai, perhaps more effectively than like other places. Um, I don't know specifics about that if I'm being honest. So I can't give you a definitive answer one way or the other, but really I feel like we just got lucky. Like that it really just chalks up to luck, I think.
Okay. Well, what I'm mostly interested in, I think, is like your experience with weathering the lockdowns that you have gone through. Um,
Hmm.
because we know how, because there are some like tidbits, some like anecdotes we pull from there looked at, like, oh, people are being welded into their houses. Oh, they're building gigantic quarantine camps, like big concrete mega structures. People are having meals brought to them door to door because no one can leave. And from what you've gone through, I mean, certainly now more so than then, what has the what measures have been imposed, and what has the response been to them? Because I know up to like right now, we're dealing with protests as a product of the severity of the lockdowns. It's
Hmm.
caused a lot of social problems. At least that's what Western media is saying. So I want to know, like, how have you witnessed the ebb and flow from your perspective?
Okay, so first, would you like me to focus on my initial experience in Shanghai, or would you like me to talk more about like recent things?
Um, Whatever you feel is most narratively important. We need the context, of course.
Yeah. So I think that it's important to say that like the situation now is very different from the situation that we had in the spring. Um, I mean, from like April to the beginning of April to the end of May, and even for some people as early as mid-March, Shanghai was just completely locked down. Like we couldn't leave our we couldn't leave the doors of our apartment units, let alone like our buildings for over a month. For some people, like even 3 months, I feel. It was a really long time. And so um I feel that that was a very different experience compared to what we have right now, where obviously there's still a lot of problems with COVID running rampant. As far as I'm aware, I feel like the protests have actually kind of like died down since there's been like a complete 180 change in policy. We went from like zero COVID overnight to, oh yeah, like I mean, there's very little rules, and people are just kind of figuring out what to do, and lots of people are getting sick.
Okay, so
Uh,
that's what I want to know about. I'm
mhm,
interested in the texture of living there. Um, you say from no
yeah.
COVID to no rules. Like day to day, what does that look like? What does that shift look like? What does it entail? What changes are made?
Okay. So I think if there's anything that's kind of like been prominent in my day-to-day experience throughout this whole year, it's been uncertainty. Um, and uncertainty kind of in the face of like seeming levels of normalcy. Um, Back in April when I was actually under lockdown, it was the uncertainty of like, when are we going to get out? How long is this going to last? And then very early on, how are we going to be able to get food? Because being able to get food was actually a huge problem for me and for my neighbors because everything was locked down, right? So I think that today that uncertainty is still a bit of an issue. Like day to day, I feel like there's some sense of normalcy. Like, I get up, I do my job. Thankfully, I'm able to work from home, work remotely. Uh, so I work at home most of the time. In Beijing, in particular, a lot of stuff is closed down because people either have gotten COVID and there's like no people to staff restaurants or shops or stuff, or people are just scared to get COVID. Um, so the day to day has changed from being, completely locked down to some degree of normalcy to just a couple of weeks of not really knowing what's going to happen next. Are we going to get locked down? Is somebody in our neighborhood going to test positive? I think that that is really challenging when it comes to kind of, getting on with your day, right? On one hand, there's nothing physically stopping me from doing my job, uh, taking care of chores and everything. But there's always kind of this axe I feel hanging above my head that might come down in the form of like, oh, I test positive and like I get swept away to quarantine. That fear is not here as much now. It's more the fear of like, okay, how long are shops going to be kind of closed and not really run by people? Am I going to be able to get medicine in another week? Because medicine is really scarce right now. Am I going to be able to get rapid tests? Because, that's the only way for people to figure out if they have COVID or not. And it's impossible to get right now because everybody just panic bought them. So
So,
uncertainty, I would say, is kind of been the prevailing theme throughout this whole year.
okay, so the no COVID. Um, are there any circumstances under which you can leave the house under no COVID?
Um, so yeah, I mean, with the exception of April and May, I can leave my house, right? I think the only situations in which I wouldn't be able to leave my house, I haven't been able to leave my house, would have been if I had tested positive or somebody in my neighborhood had tested positive. So the only situations in which I've not been able to leave my house have been first off when I was in the Shanghai lockdown and I was locked in my house from April 1st to I believe May like 16th or 17th. And then again, when I had to do a 10-day quarantine on my way from Shanghai to Beijing.
So what? So
Um,
what makes the zero COVID so draconian? Then I'm sure its specific
hmm,
implementation varies like temporally and from place to place, but we've seen you know so much of a pushback, or not just internationally, I think, but like even within China against some of these practices. Um,
yeah.
if people can leave freely, as you've said during a good portion of it, but the shops remain closed, what do you even do when you're out? Was a lot of zero COVID just people like wandering around empty streets with nothing to do? What was like the nature of the policy?
So the nature of the policy, um, from my experience, was like I've been I've been in three parts of China this year. I've been in Shanghai. I was in a city called Sanya on the island province of Hainan, in between Shanghai and Beijing. Um, I had to actually do like a 10-day layover there, quote unquote, just so I could get to Beijing because Shanghai was in my travel history and then Beijing. So I think that really depends from place to place. Some places were just completely locked down, like nobody could leave their houses, and that was the case for months. Whereas other places, it would be the sort of situation where life is normal, but you have to like scan a code whenever you enter a business in order to show that, you've tested negative for COVID. But if there's a situation where, say, for example, there's a positive case in your apartment complex or positive case in your office complex, that can lead to like a wave of like testing. People have been forced to stay in their homes for originally it was something like 2 weeks until they in their community tested negative. And that number has gradually kind of reduced as the months have gone on. But it's even gotten to the point where some people have like had to stay in their offices for days on end. Um, so in
Wait,
situations
why?
where there are, well, if somebody tests positive in your office building, there's the idea that anybody in the office building could have COVID. So, as part of like the containment measures, they have to test everybody in the office building to make sure that they are negative. And if everybody else is negative, then usually they can go home. But if there are people who turn out positive, then you in the office building for a couple of days, because, well, if you leave, you might go and get other people infected,
See,
right?
that's what I'm talking about. That's fucking
Mm,
insane. The idea of somebody in an office
mhm,
testing positive and then like the government locks the building down. None of you get to leave until every one of you is tested and you might be held there for multiple days. Like that that is
mm,
so out of line with what the lockdowns were like here in the West. The most we ever got in America,
yeah,
and America didn't get much, of course, but I'm sure you're aware, is just
mm,
the state closed some businesses down. That's it. Like that's literally it. There were mask mandates in some places, and some businesses were forced to close, like bars for a time. That was about
yeah,
it. The idea of like that degree of a shutdown is wild. It never would have flown over here. I can't imagine
mm,
people responded well to that, right? Like I know that generally speaking, East Asian cultures are a bit more respectful of like disease there's like they're okay with wearing masks like generally if you're sick, whereas over here in the States, if you have a cold,
Mm.
you just kind of like fire your revolver up in the air, your six shooter to signal to other people that you've got the sniffles. But I
Mm.
can't imagine that
Your
played well.
plague gun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. To alert the
Yeah.
populace. Yeah. I can't imagine that would have flown well. Like people can't be happy with that.
So yeah, it's hard for me to like say one way or the other because despite I could read all of the news and I could like go through every kind of like social media post that a Chinese person has made about this. My frame of reference for this is rather limited because most of like the Chinese people that I know personally are usually people who know, either speak English to a good degree or have exposure to, I guess the world outside of China. And I feel that that gives me a very limited kind of window into like how people are kind of have been like receiving this. Um, if I go from that, yeah, I mean, I think that like people were just everybody I knew were just kind of appalled when the Shanghai lockdown happened because we never thought that would happen there. I mean, Shanghai is like it's the finance capital of China, and just the fact that it was shut down for almost 2 months was insane, and we never thought it would happen. And so I think that a lot of people that I know have been very cross with it, but it's a matter like, well, yeah, it sucks, but what can you do? I think that a lot of people are just kind of come to terms with the fact that like as citizens, there's not much that can be done when you're going up against like the people who are in charge of this country.
Well, how
Um,
much complaining can people even get away with, right? Again, I know you're
ye-
mostly engaging with the English speaking people, but like general impression, right? I know the Chinese
mm,
have their own social media apps, but if you go on there and you're like, dude, fuck these lockdowns, holy shit, I had to stay in the office building for like 4 days, like to wait for a positive test, how much
yeah.
can people actually bitch about that?
Um, well, they can actually get away with a fair amount. It's just you have to be creative. I think that like something that I've observed from a lot of my friends is that when it comes to like finding ways to talk about things, it's very subversive, and the language and methods that people use to like get out messages evolves very quickly. So I feel like there's always kind of like this game of catch up going on between people who are posting things and the powers that be that step in to censor things. I remember at one point, I think it was in either April or May, seeing somebody post something on WeChat, um, like in a chat group saying that like Tencent, who develops WeChat, had developed an algorithm that blocked posts like WeChat moments, which are kind of like posts on your Facebook page, coming out of Shanghai talking about certain things to people who are outside of Shanghai. So, say, for example, in May, if you were posting about fucked up shit that was happening in Shanghai, your friends in Beijing or Shenzhen or Guangzhou might not be able to see it because of algorithms that were blocking those posts from coming out. Now, I am not sure that that actually happened. I could believe it. But those are the sorts of things that people had to come up against.
Well, China, I
Um,
mean, whether or not it's hard to know whether they did something for sure because, you know, they kind of control the system there. But that's definitely something they
Mm.
could do, right? There's nothing that would keep them.
Right.
Yeah, and it would make
And
sense, I guess, given their goals. It's a pretty big fucking country.
yeah, and there have been like a lot of viral posts that I've seen where people will share like the same video or the same article, but they'll post it from different accounts, share it in different formats, and it'll just get blocked very quickly, right? Like we get used to kind of like tapping a link and then it's like, oh, this post has been removed because it violates WeChat's terms of service, that sort of thing. Um, and people, you know, just like, okay, well, I guess I'll figure out another way to get the message out.
And
Persistence.
I take it people aren't being like mass arrested for this. Maybe for the protests, but as I understand it, the arrest rate in China is actually quite low, lower than we have in the US, certainly. And my understanding of the social media atmosphere over there is that people try like people even for those who kind of like the government, they understand they have to dance around a little bit sometimes to get the message out there. And when they do that and when the government steps in, they don't like go door to door and arrest everyone who complained about the COVID lockdowns or whatever. It's more like the government has near unlimited power to kind of constrain the discourse, and you're more likely to get kind of like elbow nudged in the forms of blocks or bans or, or other kind of like light taps, then they're just like, oh yeah, we're just going to arrest everyone, you know?
Yeah, the only situation I know of where people actually faced arrests were during the protests that happened in Shanghai. I don't know of anybody getting arrested during the original Shanghai lockdown. Um, from what I've heard, I think like some of the most, I guess, serious kind of penalties is like people might get locked out of their WeChat accounts, which is actually a really big deal because for a lot of people, WeChat is like not only how they keep in contact with people, it's how they pay their rent, it's how they pay their
Hmm.
utilities. Um, perhaps they have like a credit score that's
I did
linked to
not
their
know that.
WeChat account. Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of like a big feature of living in China. If you're whether you're Chinese or if you're a foreigner, you're kind of reliant on these one-stop apps that, where you can do a lot of different things from it. Alipay is another app like that where, first and foremost, it's a payment app, but a lot of people's like credit scores are also linked to their Alipays. So, yeah,
It's the
sometimes.
world's largest standalone mobile app since 2018 with over a billion monthly active users. It's been described as China's
Mhm.
app for everything, provides text messaging, voice messaging, broadcast messaging, video conferencing, video games, photos, videos, location sharing, plus payment processing. So
Mhm.
you're if you post something about the lockdowns and you bitch about it, and if you get banned, like you're like banned from society with this, aren't you?
has a very it can have a very significant impact on, yeah, your ability to integrate and interact with
Mm.
social society. Yeah. Um, so it's a risky game, but I mean, I guess that people wouldn't raise umbrants unless they felt there was a reason to do so. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I mean, this kind of indicates like the social control at play, right? In my opinion, China is an authoritarian government, and this is kind of the way you would orchestrate that, right? Because the old style of authoritarianism, people busting down doors, arresting, this doesn't work very well in the modern smartphone era because it's very bad optics for any government that claims to be the benevolent, envoy of the people's will to have viral posts of them like arresting college students every single week because they posted online about how the lockdowns are too punitive. So instead, you just have everyone use the same app, and if ever they violate the terms of service, which are created at the behest of the Chinese government, you just get limited within the app, and that's not really something you can form a protest around. And it's very invisible. It's very abstracted. So it's a system of control that doesn't invite much in the way of pushback. I didn't realize this was a payment processor as well. That is absolutely fucked.
Uh, yeah, there's a lot that you can do with the app. Um, and I don't know. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, as long as you're kind of like just minding your own business, like it's great. I don't know. Like I love everything that I can do with WeChat, but I do recognize the fact that, if I lose my WeChat, I'm kind of fucked. Yeah, I think that that's something that people just always kind of have to think about when it comes to like they do. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so we were talking about the move from zero COVID to I guess what's currently happening. I don't know. No rules. What? Okay. Okay. You're a Chinese citizen. You've been subjected to zero COVID for a while now. It's done. It's over. Goodbye. You're done. What does this look like? What happened? What did the government say? Did you all just get a text message and WeChat? You know, oh yeah, you guys can do stuff now. Whatever, go for it. Oh, you were complaining about zero COVID. We opened everything up. Have fun. How did that happen?
Um, yeah, so I I found out that things were, kind of like lifting up because one day a week and a half ago, I went to a testing site to go and get tested. Well, actually, I was just trying to see which testing sites were open because a lot of them started closing down a couple of weeks ago. I think that it was linked to personnel shortages because shortly before things opened up, there was just an explosion of cases in Beijing. And so I think that it was kind of like an all hands on deck thing. Um, but yeah, so I found out just by like a paper notice that was on the side of this like closed down testing site. And from there, I kind of feel it was like a slow trickle of official announcements sent out through official WeChat accounts of a lot of local governments. Like I remember seeing news, like basically that Shanghai was lifting all of its COVID restrictions through Shanghai's official announcements chat. And so I think that they did a similar thing in Beijing where official announcements went out. And originally it was public transportation, um, and then like public spaces you could go into without a 48-hour test result. You still had to show them your health code to show that you were, safe. Restaurants and bars and schools still required 48 hours, but then as the days went on, those restrictions kind of lifted one by one. So um, it's kind of been a mix of official announcements from local governments, and that's usually like citywide governments, as well as just kind of word of mouth, people being like, "Yo, so this cafe was open the other day. That was weird. I don't know how that
Wait,
happened."
is there not a central announcement? I mean, does is there not like Xi Jinping doesn't just step up and go like, "Hey, yeah, we're changing this or that"?
There is a national. I think that there is probably like a national release. I'm just speaking from like how I personally became aware of all this stuff.
That's interesting because I know that, I mean, again, I know that China is obviously an authoritarian country, but I know it's also highly federalized, right? I mean, it's a country of 1.4 billion, so it's like the United States has a fifth of the population, and everything gets cut through 50 different states, and then you have city governments. It all trickles downward. I imagine the same is the case for China, far more so because of its larger population. The idea of like getting this message in piecemeal, or having everything feel like it's kind of decentrally worked out. I don't know. It feels like that would contribute a lot to the feeling of uncertainty because that seems to be the key motif of the post zero COVID time, right? That's what I keep reading. Like people are like, okay, like I guess we're doing this now. There doesn't seem to be much of a message, right?
Um, that's to me personally, that's kind of what it feels like. Other people might have different experiences, but for me personally, yeah, I just don't know things are going. I feel that the kind of general direction is towards opening up a bit more. There have been rumors, and rumors are something we've been hearing a lot this year that the quarantine period for incoming international rivals is probably going to be reduced to like maybe 3 days or less than a week come January. Um, so yeah, for me, it's just kind of been taking the different pieces of news that I've come across and putting together my idea of where I think things are going. But you never know. I mean, I feel like things can change very quickly, as evidenced by the fact that one day it was zero COVID, and they were very much sticking to that policy, and then the next day things just continuously start opening up again.
How much do you think the Chinese government has mishandled this? Like from what you've seen, the effects you've seen, how much of this do you think is an overreach? Or how much of it do you think, maybe if it's a bit optically difficult, do you think that there's to a degree it's been worth it in preventing COVID deaths in such a large country?
Uh, it's a hard question to answer because I feel like there are people that are much more qualified to give a response on this than me. Um, I feel that in some ways, having a bit more of like a strict approach to like lockdowns and COVID, I think that it was pretty effective initially. Um, that like perhaps there's a better balance that could have been struck. Like I think that quarantine lockdowns, these are tools that can be used effectively. Now, how they're used, I think, is another issue entirely. So I think that my opinion has changed drastically in the last 2 years that this has been going on.
Hmm.
At first, I was kind of like, yeah, the lockdowns are a bit Spartan back in 2020, 2021, but hey, you can't argue with the results, to having actually gone through it and personally being like, well, is there a better way of doing this? I can't say for sure because I've never been in any form of government. I I feel like there's some things that it could have been handled better for sure. I don't know. It's hard to look at the global situation and point to like people who did COVID containment well, right? I feel like I don't have much ground to speak on like whether China handled it well or if it could have handled better. When I look at the US and I'm like, okay, well, that could have been done better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. It's because it seems like the big two problems here are one, you guys have an inferior vaccine. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, you don't have the mRNA vaccine, right? You have your own type of vaccine, which is worse because we have cool American tech. So that's probably not good. But another part of it is that it seems like the point of lockdown. Okay, so I think we can all kind of recognize that at this point, COVID's not going away. Barring some kind of big paradigm shift that we're yet unaware of, it is a permanent feature of human ecology until further notice. It might get less deadly, it might get more. We might get better at responding to it, but like the flu, it's a recurring wave of fire that will burn through us, just much more dangerous than the flu. Um, the point of lockdowns is to lower the frequency with which people get it to the point that you never overload the hospitals. But the problem, because it's not like to get rid of it entirely. You can't. It's not like the Black Death or whatever. It's not like you burn it out and you isolate it and you get rid of it. The goal is to keep it from ever like crescendoing over that kicker, that point where the hospitals are being flooded. But the problem with with China's lockdowns is that you seem to alternate between lockdowns so draconian that nobody gets COVID, basically. Um, and then when you loosen up, everyone gets COVID because it burns through the population like a wildfire. And this is the opposite of the point of a lockdown. You want to keep it in the middle. You want lockdowns that are lenient enough that people can live their lives. And people are still going to get COVID, but your hospitals don't overflow. Not this like back and forth, you know? That's my understanding of it. It's been a while since I've thought critically about COVID because it seems like the political discourse around it is so tired, but it's not tired in China. Like stuff is still happening in China, you know?
Yeah. So I just want to mention that I remembered at one point, like a few weeks ago, there was this release from the central government talking about it was like 20 measures that the government was taking in order to optimize their zero COVID approach. And that kind of came down to like if somebody gets tested positive, for example, they don't lock down the entire community. They lock down like a building or a floor or of that building, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, so I guess that there has been some central messaging on that. I just wanted to mention that because it slipped my mind earlier.
Hmm.
Um, um, sorry, my my ADD is kicking in. Could you remind me of what the original question was? Because I kind of lost it.
Um, well, I was mostly rambling about the effectiveness of these lockdowns.
Oh,
It's
yes.
it's just a tough topic to go over because in the U.S. we didn't do enough, and a lot of people died unnecessarily. Um, but now we're
Mhm.
doing nothing. The current American strategy is doing nothing, and that is what we're going to do. In China, there's still an active discourse about this, and
Yeah.
yeah, and there were those recent protests after that apartment fire. We got some rare Chinese protests, uh, which was pretty interesting, I guess.
Yeah. I I actually couldn't believe that that was happening. Never thought that I'd see anything like that in the almost decade that I've been living here. Crazy shit for sure.
Were they in your area? Did you see any?
Well, no, I never actually went to any of the protests. That to me that seemed like not a great idea because um something that can happen is like if there's something like that like civil unrest or stuff, one of the easiest scapegoats is, oh, this was incited by like a foreign actor.
Color
And
Revolution.
so it's sort of, yeah, so it's one of those things where when shit hits the fan, I keep my head down because I'm like, yeah, I'm the only white dude in my building, or I'm, like, I guess that I don't want to like put myself in a situation where I could get in trouble and for little outcome, right? Because at
And
the end
it's
of the
it's
day,
like you're a white guy there, and it's like the narrative is already to them like, okay, well, like Westerners want to bring our country down, like they're funding this, they're exaggerating this,
sure,
and then
but
you're a white guy there, and then like photos get taken for foreign press, and it's like Western tankies are like, why is there a white guy there? He's from the CIA. I get it, I get it. I can
well,
see.
the other side of this too is like, I have to remind myself that I'm a guest in this country, right? And I think that while I obviously have an interest
Are you?
in, excuse me,
Are you?
yeah,
If
I'm
you
American.
lived there for 10 years.
Um, well, yeah, but every one of those years that I've been here, I've had to renew my visa.
Nah, I
Um,
say fuck that. If somebody's lived in the United States for 10 years, whether or not they were a citizen, I would 100% call them an American. Um, I would, regardless of China's attitude. I know that not every country can be a glorious, uh, shining city on the hill melting pot, but I wouldn't call you a guest there, even if that's the perception. I certainly wouldn't think of you that way.
right. Well, I guess what I'm trying to hint on, right, is that all I definitely feel that I can be an ally and give support in some ways. I feel that whatever happens here is kind of like it's for Chinese people to decide how they want to go. And ultimately, it's one of those things where, like, they're the people who are best equipped to kind of navigate what happens and what they want to do about it. Because even though I've been here almost a decade, there's still a lot about the culture, the laws, and just kind of like the motivations that, um, I feel like it's not necessarily my place as much to be a part of that. And, I don't. I guess that there would be more of a reason for somebody who is local to be invested in this. And I don't want to like take thunder away. And no, it's not, it's,
Look, I know
man,
that
sorry, this is a little,
no, no, I know perceptively this stuff varies country to country. I get the perception. I think if you live there for 10 years, you're spiritually a citizen of the place. But also America is one of the most pro-immigrant countries in the world. It's weird saying that, because it doesn't feel that way, but it's actually true. Europeans are more
mm,
xenophobic. East Asians are far more xenophobic. Australians are more xenophobic by far. It's just that melting point. I think you'd have to go. I think Latin America. There are some countries in Latin and Central America that have a more like widely permissive attitude towards like whether you're one of them, but like maybe Brazil. But even then, I don't know. It'd be close. It's. Hmm. Oh well, whatever the case may be, I completely get that. But are you aware of those protests having taken place in your area? Like this is discourse that you've seen sort of affect your area.
um, so yeah, where I'm yes, I mean like the protest happened not super close to where I live, but like close enough to where like I kind of know where that location is. In Shanghai, the protests happened to in a place that's very familiar with me, very familiar to I think a lot of foreigners who live in the city. So whenever I'd see videos and pictures of things happening, I'd be like, "Oh wow, this is happening there." Um, and I may or may not have people that I know who were involved, but like I'm not going to confirm nor deny that.
Mhm.
I don't know, man. It's tricky talking about these things because even though, we're not on like a Chinese platform, there are still lots of people kind of strolling the internet and you know, I guess that like I feel like I need to be careful still because it's not just me that like could be implicated, but it's like, you know, other people close to me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the point of the threat, right? That's the reason they're draconian. They want to discourage. They want to incite the concern you're feeling. Um, hmm. What do you
Yeah.
think the best road forward is civilly? And I know, and you're very self-critical here. You're very aware of your lack of full knowledge. So you specifically will say, "Oh, well,
Mm.
I don't fully know this," or I can't speak fully to this. I know that, but be decisive for me. Give me, okay, you're Xi Jinping. Congratulations on your promotion. What do you do? What's the road forward?
Um, so I feel like now one of the things that they're trying to do is they're trying to boost the vaccination rate with people who are 60 or 60 years of age or above and people who are considered to be in vulnerable populations. I definitely think that that's a step in the right direction. I think that the more people that are vaccinated here, and China, to as far as I know, does have a fairly high vaccination rate amongst like younger people compared to the global average. I feel that like raising that rate of vaccination can only help with problems of, you know, people getting sick, potentially overflowing hospital beds. So I'm glad that that is something that is being done, and I think that that should be continued to push. Um, I also really hope that there are people who continue to give certain protections to workers, whether that be local or foreign, who have COVID and for obvious reasons can't go to the office. I know that there are some people who've had to go and get pay for tests just to prove to their employers that they are in fact positive with COVID, and it would be a bad idea for them to go to the office. So I think that like having those protections for workers, keeping those would be really important. And then last but not least, I think that like just making sure that people have access to a regular supply of medicine for treating COVID symptoms and as well as like antigen tests. I think that those would be really important. I think that it makes sense to have like some form of quarantine for people coming in from outside of the country. But obviously, this is all based on kind of very recent stuff. I mean, all of the opening up and everything has happened within the space of less than a month. And I'm fairly sure that things are going to change very quickly in another month.
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, like we're still getting articles daily on the situation over there, the environment. Um, it's
Mm.
just it's difficult to imagine a nation having this kind of trouble over overly punitive COVID lockdowns, when over here in America, of course, we got absolutely nothing of the sort. It's difficult to even imagine having to push back from that side of the scale, like things being overly punitive. I've read
Mm.
that that some people are saying that the CCP actually in a way is benefiting from the protest that took place after that apartment fire, because now they've been given kind of a social excuse to lay off the zero COVID policy, which is something that they wanted to do anyway because it obviously restricts economic growth to have everything shut down and to, express all this government power trying to keep everything like strictly regulated. Do you think the Chinese government is just going to keep things laissez-faire from now on, now that they feel they can't keep a cap on the situation, or are we going to keep getting this cycle up and down?
Um, it's really hard to say. Because I feel that in every situation where I have a good hunch on what's about to happen, I'm proven wrong almost every time. So hopefully, but it's really hard to say, man. That's kind of the nature of the beast. My time living here, it's really hard to kind of like have expectations of any sort.
Gotcha. So say what you think, and then we'll believe the opposite. If you've been consistently wrong, you still have predictive power.
So I think that like it's feel that once there's like a certain message, once it's been established, it's usually something that people want to stick to. So I would imagine that perhaps this laissez-faire kind of open everything approach might be the way of things, at least for the near future. Now, if things get bad again, we could very much see lockdown. It really depends on like how of hand cases get and like people's access to medicine, how the vaccination rates go up, that sort of thing.
So you're saying it's impossible to say.
It's with this, yeah, it's really, really difficult. And I'm not an expert, but I feel like even for the experts, it's really hard to accurately predict what will happen with this country.
Well, outside any efforts on your part to ape Nostradamus, is there anything that you'd like to say? Like any point you don't think that you've hit on?
Um, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's anything that I want to say, it's like, in some cases, I feel that when people hear about crazy things happening in China, no, it definitely doesn't come from nowhere. But I also have been like kind of shaking my head at some of the coverage that I've seen from Western outlets that cover certain stories here, and I'm like, okay, sure, like this has happened, but like the angle is very clearly biased, and um, I think that what I want to say is like whatever y'all hear about China, like a lot of the time there might be some truth to it. Um, and very often the case is like reality is stranger than fiction. Um, but always be skeptical because there is like a pretty clear anti-China bent, not just from like more conservative outlets, but from more liberal outlets as well. Because I think that, there's like a very tangible tension between the perceived communist threat and, you know, America's existence as a liberal democracy. So yeah, just be skeptical. Take everything that you see with a grain of salt. I think that that's most of the thing that I want to leave you with. And yeah, the Chinese people are pretty based.
Yeah, there's a
Lots
lot
of
of
good
them.
folks I've come into
I
in
I
my
should
time here.
I should fucking hope there are lots of good folks. So that many people, it seems like a mathematical impossibility. It still blows my mind, you know, because so much, because like what American culture is like hegemonic in so much of the world, right? Like if you go to Europe,
Mm.
you're getting like the down drippings of American culture, Canada, whatever, even Central and Latin America, Mexico, to a large extent, heavily influenced by the stuff we produce. China, not so much. Definitely not to the same extent. There is another nexus of culture that is not only separate from the West, but is larger than the West's, and I know nothing about it, which is insane. Truly insane, psychotic.
Yeah. If there's anything I feel like in China, or I guess like the industries here can really, they need to up their game with the whole soft power thing. Cause like, I don't know. I think that a lot of more people would kind of know about like what's going on here, have like a beat to what's going on in China if like, I don't know, there were more games coming out of here that were very, kind of like modern, but also had the unique Chinese flavor. I mean, if I think about anything that's had a huge impact from China, it's been Genshin Impact. But I feel like a lot of people
Thanks.
see Genshin Impact and they're like, oh, another JRPG, but it's like made by Chinese people, you know?
Yeah, we're
Um,
happy for the reminder that pedophilia is not exclusively a Japanese vice, and that everyone can get in on it. Um, Fucking got you, man. Fucking
amen,
piece of shit.
brother.
I really appreciate you hopping on. I'm sorry I screened you for so long. It wasn't actually screening. I'm just really bad at getting to my emails.
No, it's fine. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to come on here and talk about things. I'm sorry if I seem like evasive or if I'm not giving like satisfactory-ish answers. I guess I feel like I need to be kind of careful with what I say and also not come off super biased. You know what I mean?
No, I fully understand. Also, the like I try to think of it in perspective, right? This would be like
Mm.
I mean, it would be like me having an H-1B visa guy on to talk about America, except America is 5 times the size and also internally limits the spread of information. So it's difficult to know the whole picture of what's going on basically any issue the CCP deems, um, you know, politically tetchy. It would be impossible for them to give me anything complete. I doubt anyone could, you know. So I understand the caution.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess that like there's part of my personal experience I wanted to talk a little bit more, but I know that like in terms of like what's useful to the stream and everything, these big questions are a bit more of import. So feel that.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day I'll get to visit myself. I kind of want to. I don't know if it'd be a bad idea on account of me being very politically vocal. Um, but I'm just
Well,
so
I mean, hey,
curious.
if you can get a tourist visa, I would definitely recommend it. I mean, there's a reason why I've been here for 8 years, despite like the problems. Like Shanghai is a great city to live in. China is a very beautiful place, and you go to one part of China and you're like, damn, am I still in the same country? And then you hear people speaking Mandarin and you're like, okay, but yeah, this really is like a big salad bowl, I'd say. So yeah, I would take the chance. China's pretty cool.
All right, it's that and Israel, the two countries, where I'm worried about getting arrested by border guards. Thank you very much. It was a delight to speak to you. And if I ever visit China, I'll just knock on like 1 billion doors until you recognize me, and then we'll hang out.
Likewise, yeah, thank you again for giving me the opportunity. It's been a great honor to talk to you. One last thing before I sign off. I want to thank you personally for reigniting like my interest and my hope in left-wing politics. I had kind of become apolitical until I saw your videos, so thanks a lot for having that impact on my life.
Oh, I'm delighted to even be able to have that impact. You know, uh the delight is mutual. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Take care
Man,
and don't get arrested by the CCP.
you know what? I'll try my best. Thanks again for having me on. You and chat, y'all have a good rest of your evening.
If you were in America, you could booby trap your house. You know, you can booby trap your house as long as you're at home.
Um, damn. I guess I need to start making some bottle cap mines whenever I get back.
Yeah, this is not legal advice. Chat, don't follow my advice. Take
All
care, okay?
right, peace, man.
Peace. It depends on the state, yeah. Oh, good, CCP agent. Thank you. Thanks for drawing the hammer down quickly. Pretty sure Illegal Eagle did a video on that, and I wouldn't try it myself, lol. Yeah, well. You need to be at home. What's the point of the booby then? It's like extra spicy door locks, you know? Vaush, that was a bit biased. No, everything is biased. However, as bias goes, the guy I just talked to was pretty damn not biased. I mean, he made a pretty active effort to avoid overly narrativizing. It's a federal crime. You can't booby trap your house. What do you mean? Can you booby trap your house? Washington State. Booby traps are illegal? What? What the fuck? I thought this was fucking America. What the fuck? Yeah, what happened to being the land of the free? Oh my god. A booby trap may be defined as any concealed or camouflaged device designed to cause bodily injury when triggered by any action of a person making contact with the device. This includes guns, ammunition, explosive devices, sharpened stakes, nails, spikes, electrical devices, lines or wires with hooks attached, and devices for the production of toxic fumes and gases. What the fuck? It is prohibited in all circumstances to use a booby trap? Why? Can I make a moat with like sharks? What? Is there any state where you can booby trap? Yeah, I think you can still have a moat. What about acid? It doesn't mention acid. Okay, yeah, it's not a booby trap if it's manually activated, right? So if the entire first floor of your house has C4 stuffed in every crevice, and you see a mailman approach your front door, as long as you press the button actively, that's fine, right? No, that's still a booby trap. So what? Is it a booby trap if there's just a gun laying on your table and you press the trigger rather than picking it up? Because what? Can I put a vat of acid underneath the lawn? Hmm. You can't own C4 without a license. Okay, any bomb, a fertilizer, whatever. Can you kill the mailman on the grounds of trespassing? I'm sure it's legal to kill mailmen. That's not true. A manually triggered IED is still a booby trap? Well, then anything is a booby trap. What the fuck? The difference is personally activating it. The real answer to this, the reason why booby traps are illegal, I think, is because of firefighters or like anyone, right? The thing is, booby traps don't differentiate between legit targets and non-legit targets. If if your house catches fire when you're out and firemen come in and blow the whole first floor or whatever else, like there's literally no like discerning that can be done, which makes them, yeah, any emergency services or yeah. Wait, were you tweeting during that convo? I tweet during all convos. It's fine. Catco versus Briney. Court case decided by the Iowa Supreme Court in which two homeowners, Edward and Bertha Briney, were held liable for battery for injuries caused to a trespasser who set off a spring gun set as a man trap in an abandoned house on the homeowner's property. The case, therefore. Okay, leaving aside the legal, how psychotic do you have to be to set up a spring gun in an abandoned house? What are you doing? What the fuck? Dude. The person was stealing things from the property. It had been robbed multiple times before, but it's abandoned. Shouldn't you move the stuff from your left vacant for the last 10 years. What are you stealing from here? Rotten wood? Termites? Katko and his friend Marvin McDonough had been to the premises and found several old bottles and fruit jars, which they stole. Copper wire? How much copper wire can there be in a farmhouse? Bottles and fruit jars. Okay. Xanderhall, when are you doing your next Minecraft thingy stream? Maybe I can pop in tomorrow? I have to download the Minecraft and the mod and everything. Want to rob a farmhouse to find out? Well, every time I've gone to a farmhouse that's been abandoned in a video game, there's like nothing there. Gotcha, Zan. To defend the house against further intruders and theft, Edward Briney mounted a 20-gauge spring-loaded shotgun in the farmhouse and rigged it to fire when the north bedroom door was opened. Bertha suggested aiming the gun downward to shoot towards an intruder's legs rather than cause a mortal injury. Edward Briney also covered the bedroom window with steel. Katko and McDonough entered the farmhouse again with the intent of stealing more bottles and dated fruit jars that Katko considered antiques. When Katko entered the bedroom, he tripped the trigger mechanism, and the shotgun fired into his right leg at point-blank range. Much of Katko's legs, including part of the tibia, was blown away. Only with McDonough's assistance was Katko able to get out of the house. The gunshot wound was sufficiently severe to require hospitalization, where Katko remained for 40 days. The case stands for the proposition that, although a landowner has no duty to make his property safe for trespassers, he may not set deadly traps against them, holding that the law has always placed a higher value upon human safety than upon mere rights and property. There you go, guys. You have no duty to make your property safe for trespassers, so it's okay to make the first floor of your house just ridiculously unsafe. Like, you can let all you can like constantly dump like like fucking alcohol everywhere and like the floorboards get all wet and moldy, and you can just walk around with like a big like bowl of tacks and you're just like, oh, yeah, just like, oh, I fell, the wires are loose now, oh, let me trip all these breakers, grease the floor. Yeah, just like, what, just doing some wacky cartoon shit. And then go upstairs and sleep soundly, knowing that anyone who arrives downstairs will fucking die. Oh yeah, sure. That's why I can absolutely snipe anyone on my property in most states. Well, the point is that if they're on your property and you're there, the trespassers are an implicit threat to your safety. So using lethal force against them is about protecting your life rather than your property. Like, if you're in your house and somebody breaks in most parts of America, you can fucking blat them. But that's not because you're protecting your TV. That's because you're protecting you and your family. Um, that doesn't work if it's a burglary. 4 years after the case was decided, Edward Briney was asked if he would change anything about the situation. Briney replied, "There's one thing I'd do different, though. I'd have aimed that gun a few feet higher." Peak American.